Okay, so these are like two-step equations, right? So we did a few of these. So the top questions are just, it's the exact same thing over and over again. The top couple questions are just giving you like, they're breaking it down for you. They're giving you some steps on how to actually solve it. Okay. So what you want to do is you're going to read the problem carefully and then underline any key information. So Nick opens a savings account with $50. Okay, that seems like an important piece of information to me, like $50. And then each week after he deposits $15. Okay. And then after that, in how many weeks? I guess I'm underlining the whole thing, but he saved $500. These are kind of like anywhere you got the number, right? He's that's kind of like important information, I suppose. You can turn your mics on. Like you don't have to have your cameras on. But if you just want to like interject whatever you want, if you have a question or something, that way it's just not typing all the time. You can just like ask me a question. Okay, and you're like you can keep your mic off, and then as soon as you're ready to ask the question, you can just turn your mic on and ask it. You don't have to have it on all the time. Okay. So I would say the question here is like how many weeks will he have saved $500? So I'm gonna probably say something like let X represent the number of weeks. Okay, because that's kind of the thing I want to find out, right? And then you've answered both things here too, right? What does our variable represent? It's a number of weeks. Okay. You know, until we start doing more complicated things, like which we'll get to maybe hopefully by the end of the week, that your equation is going to look something like this. Okay. And then once you have this written down, this is like, I don't know, I'm figuring, not that I'm figuring this question out on the fly, but as soon as I see this, I can go back here. If I know what each of these are, so for instance, I know M is going to be like a rate slash slope, right? So if I see the word like per or like how much of something happened per unit of time, right? So for instance, I'm seeing each week he deposits $15, so it's like a rate, right? So every week is $15 per week, right? That seems like the slope. And then that takes care of M. And then we said B was the starting value, right? So, or we also called that the y-intercept, right? And then, so you go back to your question, you're like, okay, well, what about the question, or where I've underlined, tells me about the starting value? Well, Nick opens a savings account with $50. So he like opens the account and then puts $50 in. That sounds like my initial amount, right? And your last part is like, okay, well, I need to figure out either Y or X, right? Because now I know B and M. But the thing is, what I'm trying to find out is how many weeks, which we said was X. So we actually know what X is, but we just don't actually know it numerically, right? We know because we said X was the number of weeks. So by definition, or by like process of elimination, Y must be the amount of money in the account. Did you get it? Right? So that number is just 500, because that's where you want to find out how long does it take to get there, right? So $500. So if you rewrote the equation that's in the red box, and you said 500, because that's what we said Y was equal to m was 15, x, because the x is what we're trying to find out, and then b is the 50. Okay, so then you used to like this part where we were like solving, right? You gotta give me x by itself because x represents the number of weeks. That's what we're trying to find out. How many weeks, right? So what you gotta do is just take this equation, you bring it down here, so solve the equation, solve for the thing that's missing, or the thing that you don't know what it is, right? In this case it's x. So you gotta go, I'm just gonna rewrite it here for a sec. So 500 is equal to 15x plus 50. Now, the question is, how do I get this? Well, like, I guess the goal is to get this by itself, right? So we're just going to start doing things to this equation in a strategic order. Not really that strategic, just like what's easiest to deal with, multiplication or addition, subtraction. So I'd say the addition, subtraction is the easier of the two things to deal with, so let's deal with that. And how would I get rid of this, in the sense, like, I just want to get x by itself on the right side. So the way to do that is you bring it over to the other side, or subtract 50 from both sides, right? So I'm going to get 500 minus the 50 is equal to 15x. Right? And then you can do the math on that. It's 50 minus, or 500 minus 50 is going to be 450 is equal to 15x. And then to get the x by itself, I see that this is attached with multiplication, and then the opposite of multiplying is just going to be division. Right? So if I divide both sides by 15, the 15's cancel out, and you're left with x is equal to 450 divided by 15. What should that be? You can type that in your calculator. Should be 30.
One sec, I'm working on it.
Okay, well there's your answer. You make sure you get it right. Okay, so then after you guys get that, it's 30 weeks. So then you can write, therefore, it would take right, I'd say the hardest part always for everybody is always coming up with the equation, and then after that you're able to like solve. Like I think you guys really had a good hang on doing the solving process. But the hard part for everybody is always coming up with what this equation is. But if you know well, the numbers are irrelevant in the sense that if you know what these things mean, right, you can go back to the question and extract them and put them into their spots, right? I think that's why we spend so much time doing like the definition match and like talking about how to graph a line, which we'll do a little bit more of, right? Because when we practice graphing a line, we saw what the starting value was, we saw what it was going up by and over by, right? So that was just reinforcing what these things are. M and B, anyway, is the starting value and the slope, and then x and y change depending on the question. But if you know what each of those variables mean in relation to the graph, right, then you can go back to the words and just start putting numbers in to the equation. But it all stems, as soon as I write this down on the page, things start to make sense. I'm like, okay, I can just go find, I know what B is, I know what M is, in theory. But then you can go back to the question and actually put the numbers in. That's the main idea. Okay. So we're gonna do a little bit more graphing after. Okay, just to introduce the next concept. You guys got to be good with moving things around too, like the kind of mathy stuff, like the algebra, right? So moving and solving for a particular variable, that's going to become important. Okay. The last step they're trying to do is get you to make sure that whatever answer you get, they're trying to reinforce like you looking at that answer and making sure that it makes sense, right? So if, for instance, you want to find out how many weeks, or like in the question, you want to find out how many weeks would it take to get $500, what you would have to do is take, just to check to see if this is right or wrong, you're going to go, okay, well, you could take the 30 weeks, and you're trying to figure out how much money you're going to have. So if you put $15 away for 30 weeks, you're going to multiply by 15. That should be 450, right? But don't forget, that's not quite 500, but don't forget when Nick opened the account, he put $50 in there, right? So that gave him the $500. So then you know you're right. Well, the other way, what I did there just now was I plugged it back into the equation, right? And I checked to see if the left side equaled the right side. This is a little bit more formal, right? This way here. This is just kind of like taking your answer and using the words to kind of check to see if you're right or wrong. This is the mathematical formality way to do it, okay? So what you would do is you take, okay, well, X represented the number of weeks, so Y should equal 15 times the 30 plus 50. So that should equal 450 plus the 50. That's you using the equation that you developed right here to answer the question, or to make sure that it's right. Okay. I'm going to stop recording there and I'll upload that.